So let me go. Okay. Got it. So welcome to the July meeting of the Photo Society. And I know a lot of people are out doing things, so it's nice that everyone took the time to join us. So we have a new presenter tonight, and which is always great. That a new person is presenting. That's Luis Fernandez, who will be presenting some of his favorite photos. And then after would be Steve Kofel, who has something to show us about in Bonaire, some of the coral restoration, and then some of the favorite shots that he has from that area, from Bonaire. And then I have some pictures from this summer's trip to Eastport and Deer Island. So, Luis, if you are still with us.
I'm here.
Okay. Now I see.
All right. Let me share my screen. Oh, why didn't it do that? All right, somebody's going to have to help me because it's not going to full screen after all.
Did you hit a slideshow?
The slideshow? Is that what you do?
Yeah. Right. So that may blacken everything, and
then I won't see anything, but no, that doesn't do it. Okay, hold on a second. Let me stop sharing and change the screen first.
Okay. And for those of you that have tuned in while Luis is squaring this away, we talked a little bit about the photo dive for the group photo dive for the Photo Society in September, and it's September 11th. And at this point, it's Old Garden Beach. So it's a nice spot. We can all hang out a bit there before and after the dive, and easy parking.
Let's try it this way instead. Let's see if it behaves. There we go.
Ah, perfect.
All right. So this was one of the pictures I took last year, June 19th, Picket Ledge. This line anemone in one of the dives that we did over there on the boat. I only started actually taking pictures last year. So this one was on the 20th. This one's the 21st of June down at Foley Cove, along the wall side. I love the sea urchins anyways. They're very green, and you can see all its feeding tentacles out and stuff. All these pictures are all taken with a TG6. I have a TG6 with a BT 59 housing on a tray with 2 solar video lights, 2500. But I only use the lights at medium setting. I don't ever put them all the way up. I think it just whites out everything real quick, especially when you're getting close. And I just set the camera per backscatter suggestions to aperture priority and ISO of about 250. This one was also at Foley Cove, the same dive, this winter skate. I like this one because it looks like it's walking away from me. You can see its little back legs. This one was another boat dive. This was September 11th last year, down at Never Fail. I love the fact that the lobster was in just walking through in this crack of the rock full of sea urchins. It's kind of neat looking. This one's a night dive down at Foley Cove on the 16th of September last year. The window pen flounder. It just really, I like how he just stayed there and let me get close enough to get the details of the eyes and stuff. But this was a night dive, I believe, with Sean. This was another night dive. This was another night dive with Undersea and Sean. This was at Stage 4 Park on October 8th of last year. I love how there was a lot of particulate in the water, so it was kind of tough to be doing, and there was a little bit of a surge, but I like how this, squid just started changing colors and how you could actually capture some of its movement in a way. And this little monster that came out of the dark, that was very nice. He let me take several pictures of him before he got mad at me. I love the sea ravens anyway, so it was in the same dive. He just came out from behind a rock as I was coming out from the other side, so he made it kind of nice to shoot. This one is at Old Garden Beach. This was April 23rd of this year. We were out around the rocks and I saw this, obviously this kelp filled with nutted threaded hydroids, and all of a sudden when I'm developing it, because I didn't even notice the skeleton shrimps until I put it in the computer. And I went, oh my God, this thing's got more skeleton shrimps than I can even count. All over it. So, it's one of those things that even last year when I started shooting, every so often I'll take a shot at a rock, even if my eye doesn't quite catch what's there. And next thing you know, when you're developing it in the computer, you find that there's stuff that you missed. This one was on May 17th of this year at Back Beach. The Arctic lyre crab hiding and walking around the sand. You can barely see him, but he's got these little eyes. And actually, my son was diving with me. Diego was diving with me, and he's the one that spotted him and pointed for me to be able to see him. Because at first I just thought it was just a piece of weed being tumbled around because there was a surge. And he's like, nope, look closely. This one was actually last week. Yeah, last week, 18th of July, over at Old Garden. This rock gunnel was in between. This was at one of the big rocks there. But this one's full of sea urchins and stuff, is more towards 0 degrees, not straight out. And it's full of green sea urchins, and we were just going around looking at things, and all of a sudden we come up on the top and it's full of seaweed, and we found this little guy sticking his head out. And he stayed there long enough for me to take the shot before he disappeared into it. He backed down in there and never to be seen again. From that same dive, this shorthorn sculpin, actually there were like 3 of them all over the old small ones all over the rock. But this one in particular was funny because as I'm trying to get low enough, lower the camera and stuff, he started swimming right towards the camera. So I was like, wait, he's posing. He's very cooperative. But, those are basically, 10 shots that I pulled out of probably, by now I got definitely over 100 and somewhat shots that I process and I like, and I've posted some, but when I first started to prepare for this, it was like, okay, it should be 10. I came up with like 25 to try to cut it down. It's difficult. It really is. I
It
can
is
see where
difficult.
people have a hard time doing this.
You have some great shots, some really good shots, all very different too.
Yeah, thank you.
And nice use of the background, because like on the window pane flounder, if I remember, it was that one where you get all that uneven sand as a background, and yeah, cool stuff. So
Yeah, the window pane was good. I really enjoy that one, especially at night. I really do like more of the night photography than daytime. I find you can do a little more with the lights and stuff. Just like the picture that I had sent for Whitney to put on the thing of basically the window pane flounder, like you said, just swimming away, and you see that moving. It looks like a ghost going away from you.
in a perfect diamond shape too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always good luck too. Yes.
Well, it's excellent. Does anyone have any questions for? Nice stuff, Luis. Very nice.
Thank you.
Well, we go from cold water to warm water to Bonaire, and so
Okay,
Steve is going to show us about the coral restoration, and then just not just, but favorite shots from Bonaire.
all right, here we go. All right, can everybody see Bonaire?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so my wife and I, we went to Bonaire in February of 2020. I mean, October of 2020. Oh, it was February of 2021, October of 2021. And then we actually got there in 2022. So the trip got postponed like 5 times because of COVID. And the funny thing was, we originally planned for going a week. And every time we delayed the trip, we kept adding on to it. So we ended up going for 3 weeks. So I guess the bad news was COVID. The good news was we went for a longer time. And the even better news was we decided to head out on Friday night, and then Saturday morning. Wait a second. This happened. So when we were here, you were having all that snow. So this was our Airbnb at Port Bonaire by the airport that we stayed at, and that was our view for the 3 weeks. And basically, the first week of the trip, we focused on the reef renewal course at the Divvy with Denise. Many of you probably know her if you've gone on any of the undersea trips. She's known as the Coral Mom now, and she's running the program of the restoration at the Divvy. So the reef renewal diver course, it's a PADI course. It's like a 3-day course, and there's 3 dives involved in it. So basically, the first day of the course, there's a lot of discussion of why coral reefs are important, and the causes, and the decline of coral reefs and things like that. And then you start getting into the hands-on training, which for dive 1, which teaches you and goes through a program of how you go about untangling the staghorn corals on the coral trees, which is a big issue with the Divvy, because the cruise ships come in and the thrusters get turned on, and it keeps tangling all the filaments. So you got to go out and make sure they're all untangled. Also, how to clean the filament lines on the coral trees from and ropes, and then also conduct nursery surveys for predators like fireworms, and there's some snails and things like that you look for, and practice buoyancy, because it's not easy to do a lot of these tasks because you're really in 15 feet of water a lot of times, and when you're doing the outplantings, you're in like 5 feet of water with a surge. So So anyway, so the first day, you practice in the classroom. So this is a coral tree, and it's got some sample corals, and you see they're hanging from filaments. Up on the top, you've got the elkhorn corals, and down below you've got staghorn. And you know, I mean, we practiced, the various, methods of wrapping the coral and hanging them on the tree and cleaning and all of that. And then on dive one, we headed out into the coral nursery, which currently has 4 trees. And you can see here how the staghorn is all kind of wrapped around each other, and you can see the algae on the filament lines. So that all has to be cleaned because that's algae that is not good for the coral. And, by the staghorn corals all being intertwined, that it can affect its growth too. So you work on straightening those out and cleaning them. It's just a picture of Diana cleaning the corals and the filaments and all. Then another picture. This is actually Bob's tree, that if any of you donated to the Bob Boyle tree, that's his coral tree. And then you can see here, up in this area here, you've already got juvenile fish coming into these coral trees, like the little filefish up there, and they've made it their home already. So it does attract the juveniles. On day 2 and dive 2, you go out and you actually practice coral tying and the hanging of new coral. So it's not just the maintenance. You continue practicing, what you learned in the first dive, and you practice your buoyancy. So basically what you do is you wrap the filament around. It's got like a loop on one end, and you can see over on the bottom right below Diana's hands, she's wrapped a little piece of staghorn coral. There's a crimp on the top, so you push it down, you crimp it, you run the filament line up, and then you go up to the tree, and there's little holes in the PVC pipe, and you run that filament line through the tree in the position that's empty. And then you use the pliers to crimp another crimp on the top of it, so it's dangling. Here Denise is observing Diana, and then she was checking to make sure that it was tight and wasn't going to just fall off. So it's a pretty involved process, and it's again, it's not that easy to do, focusing on all of this, and just practicing the buoyancy and everything. So and then day 3 was the actual day when we took 15 elkhorn coral pieces off of Bob's tree. Actually, it was determined that they were ready to be outplanted. So the outplanting, what you do, and it had been done in advance. It's usually the instructors and the reef renewal personnel that tag and record which corals are ready. So we went and helped take them off the trees, and then we transported them to the appropriate area that they had that picked out for the elkhorn, which was up actually near the I'll show you a picture actually later, a map, so you'll see where it is. It's one of the jetties that comes out. And then you place the corals into the restoration area by using adhesive, and actually put them onto the some of the rocks or other corals that are in the area. And again, we practice the buoyancy. So it's definitely interesting doing this, because everything you've ever been taught about, don't touch anything, don't scrape things, don't do this. Well, you can see that Denise in this picture, and her, well, it looks like a right hand, but left hand reversed. She has like a pickaxe hammer. So you basically go over and whack these rocks and clear off a space of all algae and any other thing that's growing there to make a clean spot for the adhesive to stick. So it's kind of interesting to be doing that. At first, you're like scraping, and they come over and they're like, no, just hit, you know. So and then you can see that there's like a little white area where she's scraped that all off, and she's got one of the little elk horn pieces for the placement. And then Diana and Denise, you know, picked out the spots to place the corals. And that's what it looks like when it's done. So it looks like they're just sitting there, but they're actually epoxied to a cleared off spot on, you know, whatever they're attached to. So you can't see one of them here, but there's actually 5. So so this was one of 3 outcroppings of 5 elk horns that we did. And you can see already the little juvenile trunkfish is already coming over to check it out, and that will be a future reef. Now, if you're down in Bonaire and you want to go see where this is a map of Bonaire, the divvy actually, and you can see the dive dock on the left and the other little pier, and then the Pure Ocean Beach Bar and the pier that goes out there that has all the tables and chairs and everything. Well, Bob's Reef is right there. You can actually snorkel. It'll be interesting. We're going back in March of 2023. It'll be interesting to see how well the corals have done and everything. So this was the team, Diana and myself. We got certified, and the fun thing that we got to take part in was that Denise was getting certified as an instructor. So we were really her first students that went through the whole program. She was being observed by Lars, who works for the Reef Renewal program down there. And then on the right is Denise's husband, Rude, and he's the buoyancy expert. So he kept working with us on that. So we really learned a lot from him. So I do have it's like a 1.5-minute video here that I'm just going to show that just shows a little more of the whole thing. So hopefully I do have the sharing with video turned on, so hopefully you can see it, but that's Bob's tree here. I mean, it's very easy to dive and go out to where these coral trees are. You can see this is the painstaking scraping of fire corals and algae off of all of this. So they don't grow down onto the actual corals. You know, it's a lot of work and a lot of maintenance, but there's a lot of volunteers down there. And, you know, since we took the course now, we can go and we can just go do a dive and volunteer. Here, Diana is, you know, wrapping the coral with the filament, and it's not that easy to do. And then up and you got to thread it through the little hole. And if you've done it before, you realize that you can use the PVC pipes as like little tool holders, as Denise just showed Diana. And then you pull it through and you crimp the end. And now we're over where we actually did the planting, outplanting. So this is the epoxy. Not sure what it's really made out of. There's 2 compounds that they mix, and then, you know, you just kind of place it and push it down. It's like silly putty. And this is probably in like 5 or 6 feet of water. So there it is. There's the is part of the reef. So that's the first part of my presentation. So so the second and third week, it was back to just, you know, not doing a structured course and dives like that. So you know, we've been to Bonaire a bunch of times, so I was trying to do some different things with my pictures. You know, I seem like I always come back and have like all these like side view pictures of fish and shrimp and things that are hiding, and just things that just seems the same all the time. So I tried to focus on faces. So here's a file fish, and I was just trying to kind of get, a little more close up and, into the actual, instead of trying to show like the whole fish, just the little closer in fish itself. What happened there? And here is a trunk fish. And I've decided that they're loosely related to a giraffe because it looks like the lips and everything. It's just funny how different they look when you get close like this. And then the chompers on the parrotfish, of course. And the trumpet fish. I shoot with a sea life camera with 2 strobes, sea dragon strobes. I kind of do everything on automatic, to be honest. Scorpion fish, I finally got one looking at me instead of like from up above, and the peacock flounder.
Nice.
And another parrotfish that actually looked like he was coming right at me, and of course the puffer fish. So in addition to the, trying to get closer and kind of focus on faces and eyes and things, I tried to work on my macro skills a little bit too. Just trying to be more patient and let things kind of come to me instead of just clicking and, getting pictures of, arrow crabs and things hiding in crevices. But so here's the fireworm, and a banded coral shrimp. And the Christmas tree worms, which I just like this one because I finally got one. I felt like I had some like depth of field in it, where the background's kind of out of focus and the front is not. So, and this is what I was saying about, kind of letting some of the critters come out, instead of just taking pictures and hoping they'd come out good. So just a cleaner shrimp and narrow crab. And then just a couple more here, just a few other things. I like this picture because I was able to show how little the juvenile spotted drums really are, because the squirrelfish wasn't really that big. So it just kind of gives you a perspective of, how tiny the spotted drums are. So, and it gives it a nice background. So, and I just added him in because in all the years I've gone there, I've never been able to get a picture of one of these juvenile juvenile damselfish, and because they just seem to always hide. Then one came out and there I go. So and then you can see over on the bottom left, one of the little juvenile trunkfish that looks like a little cube that just floats around. And I finally had a turtle that swam over me instead of next to me or underneath me. So this is like my turtle flyby. So that was kind of cool for once. And another thing I learned was if there's a pipe or an old pipe anywhere, there's probably a good picture in it. So here we've got the trunkfish and puffer fish. This is right under the dock at the divvy. And this too, I believe, a puffer and a tang. And then out at the salt pier, I guess this guy's always hanging out in a pipe. So went and got a picture and didn't want to get any closer. So that's it, and we'll see you in 2023.
Well, very good, very good on many levels. It was wonderful to see Bob's reef. That's a nice investment. Nice to be able to work on that, something that was going.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had a special meaning for sure. I mean, and the fact that they had chosen the the corals for that planting from his tree. Because I guess, this is where they kind of lost me a bit, was they've got the different gene pools of
Mhm.
corals. So each tree is like a different kind of gene or, DNA thing. So they can't plant them all like too close to each other or this or that. And, so they, were able to, the corals just happen to be ready on his tree. So he now has that reef right there.
That's
That's
wonderful.
cool.
That's fun.
Hey, Steve, this is Chuck. It doesn't bother picking up the corals with your bare hands when you plant them?
Did we bother?
I mean, no, doesn't hurt the coral?
They said it doesn't. It's funny. And, you think that the corals are really like hard, but when you pick them up, they excrete this like jelly stuff. So like when you touched them, you had all this like jelly on your hands. So I guess that protects them. It's just their mechanism that they use to protect themselves, because I didn't expect it at all. And but no, they wanted you to do it that way. So
Are they doing any other corals besides this staghorn?
it's the staghorn and elkhorn are actually endangered species, which I didn't realize. But so the staghorn they do differently, and we didn't do that. They actually create like these grids, and they like almost like tie wrap the staghorn to these little, like they almost look like bamboo pieces, and they make like squares out of them, and then they just start to grow. But I mean, it is having an effect on the island. Unfortunately, I was looking on Facebook today, and they're having a big problem with some new coral algae thing, and they've actually shut down a bunch of dive sites because it can get transmitted by divers like touching it or rubbing up against it and then going to a different dive site and transmitting it. It's can be brought from one site to another. So you're looking at if you're familiar with the island, they're looking at closing everything from Andrea 1 and 2 all the way up to like Caparta, that whole side of the island.
Wow.
Temporary. Yeah, it's out. If you go and look at like Denise's page or Rude or any of them, or it's out there. So I did see that today. So yeah, so it was definitely an interesting course. I recommend it. And then, if you're going anywhere in the world, actually, if you're certified, you can join a volunteer team in the Keys or, Cayman Islands or wherever you go. So anyway.
Steve, can you talk a little bit about the time frame? So they harvest small pieces of coral, and then how long before it's ready? And then
They didn't get into that much. I mean, that was more like the instructor and they didn't really talk about how long it actually took. And I don't remember seeing any of that. And even the, I have my guide here. It's just, they just kind of determine when they're big enough. I mean, I'm just looking quick here, and I don't see anything about how they know when it's ready. I mean, it may just be the size it grows to that they feel it can be on its own.
And did you get to see any places where they've had maybe transplanted some stuff a while ago and it was growing?
Yes. Yeah, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it looks like, huge like reefs. I mean, they're all over the wherever you dive on the island. Now you see these. I mean, just about every dive shop has, a coral tree nursery now. And then, there's areas that, they'll show you where they've actually done the outplantings. I mean, the staghorn is really impressive, because it's just like, a whole area of just, and it's all come from maybe a handful of staghorn corals. So it's been successful. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of maintenance. Some of the trees that you see on the island aren't as maintained as well. It seems like the Divi's been doing a really good job of getting people out there to keep after it. So.
Yeah. And those two are the fastest growing of the species. So
Yeah.
The elkhorn and the staghorn, they grow faster than all the other corals that are, I think all the other corals in the Caribbean.
Like I said, it would be interesting to see going back a year later, like how big those got,
Wow. Well, thanks, Steve. And then also you had a nice collection of images afterwards. Great.
Oh, thanks.
Nice to challenge yourself and to, you know, and just try to shoot fish faces and do something, make yourself something
Yeah.
that's different. Yeah, that's
It was kind of fun. It was something different. Yeah.
good, good. Well, thank you. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, now the last one, I have some pictures from in June, end of May, June. I went up to Eastport and Deer Island. So if I could share my screen. Hmm. Hmm. I am system preferences. I am, it's not letting me. Video.
No, I have it on mute and no.
I'm not able, it's giving me what I don't want. I'm trying, it's sending me to my system preferences and I'm trying to share the screen. Can anyone see anything that I have at this point from here?
No,
No. Okay. I'm not quite sure what's,
you're trying to hit the share screen button and it's asking you for something else.
yeah, it's taking me to, if I get, my desktop doesn't seem to be open, but if I do that, it takes me to my system preferences, which is kind of weird. If I should just get out and then go back in, see if I can try that.
Yeah.
Okay, who's got some embarrassing Andy stories we can tell while he's gone?
Good, Ellen. I like it. I don't have
Somebody
any
must
though.
have.
Come on. Here he is.
He's too well behaved.
Right? Come on. All right, he's connecting.
Christine said there was a great white shark sucking off.
Oh yeah, Plum Cove, Plum Island, right?
Plum Island?
Yeah, is that what Joni was just mentioning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow.
I didn't know you could hear me. I'm glad I didn't say anything bad.
You would never to begin with. You're too sweet.
I don't know what's happening, how I'm not in there, because I hit the share screen and it's taken to something I've never seen before. Files one more time. That box.
Does anybody have any idea what might be happening? I have not encountered this.
No, me neither.
Do you have a slideshow or just, you're gonna do it within Lightroom or something?
Within, right from the desktop, I just have a folder with several images, and that's what I'm gonna work through from that. So it's not
Can
on.
you throw them into the cloud?
I could. Actually, they should be in the cloud. They should be in the iCloud.
If you could share that with somebody, then somebody else could show them.
Can we pretend they're ours if we do that?
I think we should look at them first and see if you want that.
Okay,
Yeah, you don't want to do it. You don't want a blank check here.
yeah, no.
Open later. Okay. Now try this desktop.
Oh,
We might be getting somewhere.
Wait a minute, we got something.
Yeah. Supposed to give you my desktop. Did it? It gave you. Do you
So we
see?
can see that.
What do you see? My desktop?
We
like the
see
Zoom
launch
screen,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says click open link on the thing. So just open your presentation and we should be good to go.
But I can't see it. That's the.
Ah,
It's a minor. detail.
Minor
There it is.
detail.
All right, so maybe, let's see, that work?
there,
Yeah.
we can see a map.
Okay, well then, let's go from here. Okay, so I went to, as I said, in June, May and June. And I'm going to continue with what Steve was saying when he had said he had been to Bonaire many times. Well, I've probably been here at this place 35, 40 years of going each year, once or twice a year. And so this is the general area. This is all of Maine. And then that's the border here. And this part is all Canada. So this is basically the area. And so our dive site, usually we start off in, this is Deer Island, which is part of New Brunswick. And so we dive in this section, and then afterwards come back after a week, go to Eastport to dive there. And that's generally where we dive, in that southern section of Eastport. And on the drive up, I told myself, all right, no anemone pictures, because I have, I don't know how many years worth of anemone photos. So I said, you got to shoot something else. Well, I failed miserably because it's hard to not shoot them when it's so pretty. But after the first day, then I realized I just was trying to do something else with the anemones. Now, there's anemones that are, they're real pretty, real colorful. But this is what I have a lot of, is these and this view, which you see the mouth, the oral disc, and all the tentacles. But I shoot a lot of stuff for as natural history to try and show the whole animal or what the animal does. So part of what I was trying to do was to try and do some of that with a couple of the creatures, and anemones were one. I mean, I put some so you could see where it is in its environment. So what I did is I placed myself so that I could shoot it looking like this and have a diagonal of sponge on one side, sponge on another, and just so you could see where the animal is, rather than just this, and then you don't see anything else. So then on some of the places on the overhangs where there were a lot of these anemones. And unfortunately, the most common one is this sort of a pale orangey reddish color. And that's the largest number of this northern red is this one color, different shades. So instead of getting in real close, I just backed off a little so that you could see where this was under an overhang. So there's all the different sponge on top and brachiopods underneath. So you can see where the animal lives. And so with this one, I was able to do a little of both. And so this was with a real super wide angle lens. So I was inches away from this, which is about the size of a soccer ball. So I put the lens right in front so that I could get all the detail of this animal, but yet have these two on the side. So for a wide angle lens, it worked. I was pleased at how it worked. So you can see how the anemone really is as a column like this. You know, you see both of these columns, and then actually see the detail on this one. And then in addition, some of the background, so that's why I didn't go way in close, just so you can see where the animal lives. And in ones like this, where what I did was use the animal as a grouping. So it was like this, I just, let's not make it large enough. See if I can get this. No. Okay. So that it would be a visual journey, so that this is really what the one I was keying on in the beginning, focusing on that, so that then you would just go looking at it this way. So it would be one giving a sort of, without sounding corny, a little journey for your eyes, and at the same time then having these diagonals, which I think help the grouping. Now it's made a couple of dives just looking for this sort of thing. So we swam along, there's an area called the point. So it's a real drop off, and it's each step has piles of anemone. So it was just trying to find some with pleasing groupings, if you want. And because the actual background, like on these, where it's just all sort of a dullish growth, and it's not all that attractive. And it's sort of the same thing. But this, because what I try to do is to make this a little bit darker, just to make these stand out a little more. And then side lighting them to try and bring out some little more of the texture. Because they are pretty animals. But this was what I was trying for the single ones. Because if they, like the very first anemone was right up against the rock, well, you don't get to see anything. So what I was looking for was one that would have, that you could see the column sticking out, and then, the oral disc, the mouth, tentacles all sticking out, so you can see how how it lives. And then also it's in the critters that it lives with. And part of me tries to be strict. So on each of these dives, because I'm trying to do the natural history thing and just shoot that sort of stuff. But usually 20% of the dive, and it's often at the end, and I just pull the plug on that way of thinking, and then just look for shapes and patterns and stuff. And that's really the fun part. So with this anemone that was closing up, it stayed like that for a while. So it wasn't just a quick shot. I came upon it, looked like that, and it was kind of frozen in that position for a while. So it was slow motion. But to light it, I put the strobes, one strobe way off to the side and another one to the side. So it creates all this little shadow and made the center dark. Because if I put the strobes anywhere closer to the camera, than you'd see in here, which would be okay, but it's not the look I was trying to get. I was trying to get it so that that would be a dark area. And sort of the same with this lobster. It's a gigantic lobster. Doesn't look like it here. Again, it's with a super wide angle lens, but that's probably a 10 or 12 pound lobster. 10 pound, 20 pound, 25 pound lobsters are not uncommon there. It's an area for a couple of reasons. One, you can't dive to get them. They wouldn't fit in a lobster trap anyway. And the other is the current is so strong between the tides that they'd never put a lobster trap there. It would just blow it away. It's just really strong current. So with this one, since I have a lot of lobster pictures from this area, but again, was doing the same thing as the anemone. I just back off a little bit just to show where it lives. And some of the areas lent themselves to that, like this one, I think, with the sponge and brachiopods and then all this coralline algae. Some of them didn't, and if they didn't, then I didn't even bother to photograph it. But just the ones that looked like it had a decent background.
I think next time you should put your hand down by the claw so we can see how big it is.
Maybe I could borrow yours. This, good idea. This here is probably 16, 17 inches. They're mammoths. I mean, some of them, this section here is bigger than my foot. They're absolutely, and they move like backhoes in the ground. They're just slowly lumbering, moving along. And that's actually kind of a concern it is a concern on this area where I said it's like slopes or steps going down and then drops to 20 feet and then another 20 feet. Well, if you're photographing something above, you really have to look twice about where your feet are hanging, because you don't want to hang it in front of here because it would just simply break your ankle. And that would kind of ruin the dive, I think. So, but the next time I may try a hand, but maybe. And an ocean pout. So the ocean pout, like a lot of fish, I try to shoot them from eye level. But with this one, I get up a little bit higher on it just so that I could get this in there, because I liked it and I thought it would add to the image itself. That, along with the fact that there was stuff here in the front and it was hard to get it it's hard to get on an eye level or even down a little bit lower. And these are orange-footed sea cucumbers. They're very common, and usually you see one, and then a little ways beside it, another one and another one, but you don't see it. It's the first time I'd ever seen a group like this of them. And so what I tried to do is aim at the strobes from the side so I wouldn't light anything in the back. And then I did make it a little bit darker, because the water column, if you have water in the background, it's in this area, it's absolutely brutal. The visibility it's always poor. So sometimes it's less poor and other times it's more poor. So it's never any good. So generally if I shoot anything, and it's especially in the days that are bad, then I just aim a little bit down towards the bottom. So you don't, the backscatter and all the stuff that's in the water, you don't see it. I mean, it's the same thing around here. If you find yourself making a dive here and the visibility is not great, there's a lot of particulate matter in the water, then choose a sandy area and make sand your background. All that stuff is still in the water, but you won't see it. If you try to shoot something where water's in the background, it'll all show up as just kind of crap in the water.
How big are those, Andy?
Huh?
How big are those?
This here is probably 13 inches or so, 12, 13. Like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I lit them. Another reason for lighting it on the sides is that so it would bring out all the texture here, the bumps here and all the little tube feet. Yeah, they're very big there. Again, there's because of the current, it's bringing a lot of nutrients, and these animals don't go very far. They just stay in one spot with their 2 feet. They attach to the bottom, and then they stretch out these tentacles and feed. And with all the nutrients being brought to them, you know, they get to be pretty big. And the same with, there's a breadcrumb sponge. It's not a very interesting sponge, but the reason for showing it tonight is that it's the lighting that would make you see, or allows you to see all the texture. So where there's little bumps here, little holes in the sponge, and all these little bumps, if you were to light it sort of straight on with the strobes or close to straight on, the light would fill in everything and you wouldn't see the texture. So to make the texture really come out, it's you're lighting the sides. And so what that does is creates, you know, a bright spot on one side of the bump and a little darker side on the other. And then I try to have one strobe not as strong as, it's like this one was full power, and then this one was a little less, so that you can see a difference. And the other animal that I have shot a lot of, have a barrel of pictures of, is the sculpins, the shorthorn sculpins. So I was just trying to shoot the ones, generally, the ones that were real colorful or were doing something. And so with this, it's the, I don't know, I see it more in the springtime, and I don't know if it's a mating color, but I see them with this sort of a model color, and it's a yellowish or orange, and it can be very pretty. So I made sure to light on this area. And when you see one with the dorsal fin up, I find it more interesting. So a way to do that, but it doesn't always work, is once the animal is used to you being there, then you, with one hand, you raise it up high, sort of like being a cobra, if you want. And now that fish is on heightened alert, and it raises all its fins and ready to take off. Same thing would be in, let's say, if you're in Bonaire, and you know the peacock flounder, it has little blue spots on it. If you do the same thing, I mean, once it knows that you're not going to cause it any harm and you're okay with, do that. Raise your hand slowly, straight up, not towards it, but straight up. And all those blue spots get darker and more vibrant. So it's kind of a nice way to get it to make itself more colorful. Now, with ones that are like this, it doesn't really work. I mean, forget about the fins. It's just this area was kind of darkish. There wasn't a lot of the bright coralline algae. See, it sort of was just draped over there. So, you know, I took a couple of shots, but then I wasn't going to waste any time with this one because it wasn't all that nice. There were a lot of them there. So that also made you a little more picky. But this one, and again, there are wide variety of colors in the shorthorn sculpins. So my goal is to try and get the whole animal. So I try to get close, as close as I can to the head, and then hope that make the tail somewhat visible. Doesn't have to be everything completely, it could go off into a little bit of darkness, but at least it's there. And by getting the head in first or closer, then that becomes bigger and fills more of the frame. And then I made sure to light all the parts here. I put the strobe right on. This strobe was set stronger than this one here. That I just let it go to not to dark, but just a little darker, and then bring all the attention to this guy. and it's the same after I was done with this, then I got in real close and I didn't care whether I got the tail and everything. I just wanted to get the head and then play with all this color and its nice pectoral fins. And so, and it's also, as someone said earlier tonight, it's the luck. I mean, it's you can get real close to some, and even though some animals have a certain set behavior, and we all know them, you know, with a lot of these, you can expect what they will do. Yet every once in a while, there's one that just doesn't follow the rules and is just completely docile, which is kind of a treat. Now, this normally, I would not, another shorthorn, I initially passed by it and I didn't even really look at it much because it was just gray. And I have too many of the just gray ones. But when I was a little above it, then I saw that all of these pectoral fins went off on like a big web on the side. So although I don't shoot from above very often, I put the camera above on this, which allowed me to get both eye and mouth in focus, and then have all this, these pectoral fins sort of add to it. I like the way it came out. And then for the natural history part, when I saw this one, there's a smallish shorthorn sculpin, but it matches the coralline algae. I mean, there's like the dark spots here, and this matches along with these. So it's a, I took it just to show its camouflage ability. And initially, when I was setting myself up, this hermit crab was facing me. So I thought, oh, wonderful. And then that's it, gave me its backside, and that was the end of it. I didn't have any luck after that. But and the last of these dark-ish sea ravens, sculpins. Again, as I said, just for the last one, I really don't shoot the ones that are dark. But this one had that one band going across the head and a pure white mouth. And it just sort of radiated in the water. So I took a few shots of this, but when you look at the rest of it, all this area on the side, it's all sort of dark and not terribly different in color from the sculpin. But I just thought its pectorals and the mouth and that added to it, made it a kind of a different sea sculpin rather. Now it's a sea raven. Again, shooting from above. I mean, I shot more from above than I haven't, I don't know how long, but I had a 105 macro lens now, which is it's a macro lens for shooting small creatures, basically. And in the tropics, you can use it for little creatures. If you see something a little bigger, you can just back off a little bit and still photograph it. Well, in the water that's up in Eastport, you just can't do that. You can't have that kind of distance because you'd be having way too much stuff in the water, and so it wouldn't. So I tried this to see if I can get a camo look, and then I changed it to white to see if that would carry it. But I mean, if this were in the hands of Tom Gately, probably get a better image out of it. But this is at this point, it's a winter project, and may come back. And I did the same thing happen with a goosefish. The first time in, I don't know, 45 years that I ever saw a goosefish up in Eastport. Never. So I saw one that was about 2 feet long. Again, I'm with that macro lens that all I could do, and that was still at a bit of a distance, was getting the two eyes, the mouth, and then all this. So I tried once again with this to try and see if I create something that had the mouth stand out and the little chin whiskers, but that's still on the drawing board. So maybe
Looks like a James Webb telescope photo.
You're right.
So how close were you to that?
I was probably 15 inches away, 12, 15. And
And-
that's
and it
really
didn't-
stretching it. And if it hadn't been for that kind of a funky coloration, I never would be able to photograph that because I mean, 10 foot is the common visibility there, 10 foot with a ton of stuff floating by or in suspension. So, I mean, what we do is we leave our dive lights on all the time so we can find each other when we go more than 15 feet apart. So it's not great, great condition. So that's why, I mean, I would love to have gone back a little bit and get the whole guy, but it would not be, no luck. And there's a small, very small, yellow false Doris. This is a little Doris that's about 3/4 of an inch. So it feeds on these bryozoans that are on a little blade of kelp. So a couple of things to get this to stand out. So I put the strobes off to the side to bring out a little more texture. And then I got almost on top of it. I know with nudibranchs, it's always best to shoot them slightly from above, but I did much more, even at the risk of losing these rhinophores, just to be able to get a hint of the gills, but it was more just playing than anything. And then a tricolor nudibranch, which this is the only place I've seen them, is up here. And then the common red gill. This is the red-fingered Aeolus. And the reason for taking this one, and I have one other one, but this is because I wanted to use this to be able to use this to show how you can identify this nudibranch. Because this nudibranch has two key identifying features. One, the serrata and like little bunches. So there's a space between. So there's little groupings of them, and then a white line on the tail. So if it's, you see those two, then it's automatically, it's this nudibranch, the red-fingered Aeolus. Now, and luckily it was on a dark area on kelp, so it didn't reflect any light. Where the same species on a lighter background with reflective coralline algae, then it really, yeah, it's more colorful, but you really can't see. It's not as dramatic. I think the other one it works better. And another thing I'm always a sucker for are hermit crabs, and here they're giant hermit crabs. So then they're often perched up on something. So I shoot them from a little below. So now they look a little more grandiose, a little bigger than they are. And then with this one, because it was a pretty shell, and I just turned around a little ways just so that I could get the whole spire to show up. And this was with again, a super wide angle is 10-17. And it was more playing because I was probably 2 inches away from this crab. But it's such a wide angle lens that it allowed me to take its all background where it was with sponge in the back. This is on a very small wall. But also by shooting with a wide angle lens, I was able to get depth of field like on here and here, which normally with a macro lens on my camera, that's impossible. And is another crab. Now this is the Arctic lyre crab, and as like the one that Luis showed, they're just covered with stuff. And I have some pictures of them covered. I mean, you don't, as he said, it was, didn't even realize it was a crab. Well, yeah, when they're on the rocks, unless they move, most of the time you don't see them. But this one particularly sort of perked up a little bit and showed the pinches here. So once you could see that, and then I aimed the light right at its face, it it's a chance to be able to get one. I mean, you can't see all of the crab, but you can certainly see that it's all covered with stuff because it's a master of camouflage. It covers itself with hydroids and this doesn't have sponge, but they often will cover themselves with sponge. So it's tough to spot them. And I knew that the dive was getting a little slow when I found myself spending time shooting the butt end of a sea cucumber. But it's what it is. It's so with this one, I was just playing with the tube feet and did the same thing as one of the others. I just made sure the top strobe was set a little bit higher, and then this one a little lower. So now it gave a little more of the texture. And then lastly, this is a gold star tunicate. It's a colonial tunicate. Comes in a variety of colors, and obviously it's not gold. And so to photograph these, I always look for them on a flat surface. So if it's not on something flat, with my camera, I just can't get as many of these in focus. So I picked ones that it was flat, and then one that I could see an area that I could see one grouping that was going diagonally, and then focused on that. And then the others could be okay, but even if they were a little less sharp, it's just that I could have something like this that would be more visually pleasing. But it's one that unfortunately it was on a purplish coralline algae in itself was also kind of a purple color, so it wasn't as much contrast as if this were on something else. But anyway, it's just something that, as I mentioned earlier, where we'll just play with patterns and shapes during part of the dive, and it's a lot of fun. And that's the end of Eastport and Deer Island. So if any of you, I know some of you have been up there, but if you have not, well worth the trip. I mean, like many places, it's not as good as it was years ago, but it's still very, very good, and get to see a lot, and it's a little break and a little variety. So if you have any questions, or be glad to answer. And if not, some of you, I see that more people have joined in. So just as a reminder, September 11th, we'll have a group dive, a Photo Society photo dive at Old Garden Beach, but Whitney will be sending something out. So in the meantime, if you're interested, put that on your calendar.
This was May, June when you took these shots?
Yes, I try to go the last week in May, the first week in June, because that's typically it's when most of the biological things are happening. Animals are spawning, but there are a couple of other factors were going on. So that all happened before we got there for the very first time. I mean, it's always, nothing's like on clockwork, but they usually, like the waved whelks and Neptune's whelks, they're laying eggs all over the place, and you can see them laying eggs, and it's great. Or the sea stars are spawning, releasing eggs and sperm into the water, and it's all pretty cool to take pictures of. But that had happened. Now, whether the water was a bit warmer, so maybe that accelerated the whole process. But if you were looking, you mentioned, Becky, you were looking for new sites, that would be, and I'd be glad to talk to you about that, about telling you where to go and all that stuff. So, because it's well worth it. So it's a long drive, but it's a nice diving.
Kind of cold.
No, not terribly. No, I mean, it's nothing like what Lana had. Lana had, that's cold. This is not terribly different from here.
Oh.
Because if you look at it on a map, it's not that far. It's more east than anything.
Okay.
So we had low 50s.
Oh, that's not bad.
Low, 50 from, it was sometimes 47, 48. Yeah. So, and you only make 2 dives a day. So even if you get a little chilled, you get a chance to warm up.
Do you have to dive the tides because they're so large?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah. So you look at the tide schedule and see which one works better for the time, that helps in selecting the week.
Hmm.
That's how we do it. And
So I got an interesting email today about August 16th at GMGI,
yeah,
and I think you need to do some shameless advertising.
the, yes, I just posted it on there. There's a, in the Gloucester Marine Genome Institute, they're having a presentation August 16th. And so I'll be showing a bunch of images of stuff from the Gulf of Maine, and maybe talking a little bit about how things have changed a bit. And then it'll be followed with one of the scientists from there, Jennifer, who will be talking more, well, the scientifically, what the work that they're doing, and it should be pretty good. That's nice of it. And it held at it's in Gloucester, and the Gloucester Marine Genome Institute. So, let's see. Is there, let's see what we have. Oh, we do need another speaker. Another speaker. We could use another speaker for August. Anybody have anything in their folder in their computer that they have not shown? Again, this is anyone, we have the last 2 weeks, last 2 meetings, we've had people who have never presented before. So it's just terrific. And that's exactly what we hope to have all the time, so that we all can learn and we can all share. So think about it. If you are taking pictures and you would like to share what you have, then we can all benefit from it. Okay, well then, there's nothing else. I will say so long, and we'll see you next September. And is September's meeting, no, August meeting is a little different. We have a different date, Whitney. Remember
Yeah, we have to move it to the last Wednesday of the month, I believe. Because you're going, are you going on a trip?
I'll be away, yeah.
So we'll announce that, but everybody just know that it'll be the last Wednesday of the month, not the last Thursday. But we'll send that out to remind you.
And we'll send out something asking for new speakers. So consider it. All right, if you could, that would be good. All right, so thank you for tuning in. I know things are always real busy in the summertime, so it's nice to see we had 19 people, 20 something at one point. So that's wonderful. So good night to you all, and thanks for joining us. And Luis and Steve, thank you very much for presenting. That both were terrific presentations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.